All right, Kennedy, you want to make a move?
I'm gonna make like an adding on to Ashley's because it's like a whole big blob and you like the paragraphs there's 0, you cannot see it. It's like a whole bunch of like letters, and sometimes you can't see. Sometimes like if you have to go do something real quick, you may lose it where you are.
Okay. You were going to add on. So she mentioned paragraphs. You mentioned paragraphs. Is there anything you wanted to add on to that?
Like if there was paragraphs, you could see like neatly there'd be like a whole indent there.
Okay. Okay.
And you could see it.
So, as Ashley shared with us earlier today, that after you've had some time to do your thinking and you're growing your thinking together, do you remember how you described that? That what I do now is I'm going to bundle your thoughts kind of together?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if I'm going to bundle your thoughts together, what I'm hearing you say is that, well, Drew started off with just he was sincerely reading the information. And there was some interesting information in there, and some of you shared that. You heard some details, like Aubrey shared, that this might convince me if I didn't really care about fish before, I might like fish now because there are some really interesting details in there. And then Caleb noticed and taught us that there was a really interesting, engaging beginning, and it had us picture something in our minds. And what is that? What technique is that we use when we try to help someone picture something in their minds? Does anybody remember? What might that be? What technique? Go ahead, Grant.
I think it's visualizing, because you're picturing a underwater scene in your mind, so it's visualizing since you're going to visualize it in your mind.
So you are thinking of a reading technique that we use. So you're visualizing. Thank you for sharing that thinking. I wasn't going there. I was thinking of a different type of technique that was being used. So from a reader's perspective, I totally hear what you're saying. So thank you for sharing that. But what if we were thinking about it from a writer's perspective? What if we are able to help the reader visualize? What has the author done? What technique might they have used to help the reader visualize? Any ideas about that?
Yeah. Like, you know how you did in your writing, and then the author, in his story, some of the things might not make sense. So, some people, like if you read it to us, they might ask, like there was some clarification in there, like that.
But is there a technique, a writing technique that you know of that might help clarify?
Information text.
You're writing informational text, but is there a writing technique? Do you need a moment to turn and talk, maybe?
No.
No? Do you know what it is?
No.
Okay. Maybe there's not just one right answer. I know I'm thinking of one, but that doesn't mean it's the only one. You gonna pass it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you know what? You know what I just caught myself doing?
What?
I was gonna do it. I was gonna move it, and remember how I was talking about how earlier
When
I
you
did.
said, let me see, I'm like, oh no.
Yep. So thank you for taking a leadership role there and making the move. I appreciate that. That helps me. Go ahead, Kennedy.
I think it's like a rough draft they might have done.
But when I'm okay, so maybe that was a rough draft, but when we're talking about Caleb's visualizing, he was able to visualize what the author was talking about in the text. What writing technique might that have been? You're going to have to kind of dig back to some of the things that you learned when we were writing about personal narratives and personal essays. I know we're shifting to informational, but there's still all these great writing techniques that you've learned.
They might have just
Clarification, adding on, just
put it on the paper so they could get all their ideas down.
What move are you making?
Well, I asked a very specific question. So this is making it a little harder. Thank you for taking that leadership role too, Brittany. Did you hear how she just said, what move are you making?
I actually really don't know.
And that's okay. That's okay, because I asked a very specific question, and I am looking for a certain answer, but maybe this is showing me that maybe I haven't been very clear about something. I'm thinking, in my mind, what I was going to, when Caleb was describing how he was able to see the fish swimming in the water, and the author wanted you to see that, and Grant shared a reading technique called visualization. He reminded us of that technique. And then I was actually thinking of a great writing. So he shared reading. I shared it. I was thinking of a writing technique that you all have practiced a lot this year in your composition book. And if you were to look back at some of your objectives and some of the things that you have done in your writing to help your reader visualize something, what is that writing technique called? So it was kind of hard because I was asking a very specific question. So Brittany, I appreciate your leadership in asking her that too. You remember?
Yeah. Snapshot.
Ah, yes! That's what I was thinking of, but you see, that's your brains were not necessarily where my brain was. And that's okay because it helps me know how to continue moving forward with our lesson. So, thank you. You got there. We're on the same page now. All right. So, you're going to notice a lot of writing techniques in this text that the author used that, pardon me, were really, really good. I know. That desk jumped out at me.
Whoa.
Okay. So, you noticed there.
Underlying words.
Why do you think those might be underlined? Are they incorrect?
You could raise your hand.
What do you think, Britt?
They are in the
I know.
like the back of the book. I know.
Do you hear what she's saying? We say it. I'm sorry. We say it a little louder.
They're in the back of the page index, right?
Oh. Thanks for sharing that. Does everyone know what she's talking about? Okay. Well, these are some, Rasbora is another popular fish. The slender danio. The danio is another Asian fish. So, if I were to look in the index, Now, on this one, though, sadly, there is no index. Aww. But if there was something different about this text, then there might be an index. I noticed many of you talked about paragraphs and how that there were no paragraphs and that made it bad writing. Well, but then many of you disagreed with that, and you were talking about how there's really great writing. You were able to visualize things and maybe like some fish that you didn't think you would ever like before. So I'm noticing many, many hands going up, so you must be thinking something here. But I'm going to just take this, and you were talking about paragraphs earlier. So I'll start there. Paragraphs.
I know what it is. Red lines.
The red lines? What did you want to share about the red lines?
They're spelled wrong. No.
Are they?
Capital. They're not spelled wrong.
I think
I know.
Brittany was on to something there.
Name of something.
Calvin.
They're unrecognized words. That's what I was going to say. Calvin, you stole it. Meanie. Not lying.
Unrecognized words. Does anyone need clarification on that, or you all understand what he's saying?
Wait. I can do it.
Okay. I believe these are the paragraphs now. because I was hearing many of you talk about how, you could lose your place and it would be so confusing, and it just was like a big blob the way it was before. And then Brittany brought up an index, and that those words are unrecognized because those are probably sounded like they were some names of different types of fish, and that if there were an index that we could probably look that up and find it. But there's a lot of things that are missing. There are many things missing in this text, and one of them you noticed was paragraphs right away. And another you're noticing now is maybe an index.
I've never even.
And is this... Oh, I believe that's another paragraph right there. So what else? I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor. So again, you notice there were some engaging text. It's not that the ideas are bad in this. It's not bad writing. Maybe it needed paragraphs, but that was an easy fix. What might be some different things that could be done? Joseph, feel free to do that when I'm not teaching, sweetheart. Thank you. I want you to take a moment to turn and talk about what are some things that might be done to improve this piece of writing further. It's informational text. Uh-oh. I know you're excited about sharing already, and I'm so glad that you are so ready to do this thinking. But you want to make sure that you hear it all, the directions clearly, okay? Thanks, honey. So, paragraphs, we got that sorted out. An index, I could start adding that based on what Brittany was sharing about those unrecognized words. And you guys are all ready to jump in. So why don't you just take a moment to turn and talk. But this is now one of the things I want you to focus on. As we work on our independence with our growing our thinking, when your partner shares his or her thinking, what is important to remember to do?
Listen.
Did you hear Drew?
Yes.
How do we truly listen?
Whoa. Oh, sit up straight.
Oh, so
Don't just
body language. That might be important, okay?
don't tune out.
What else shows that we're really actively listening to our partner?
You're leaning and nodding, and you're actually looking at them instead of going back.
So you're leaning back in your chair, and that's an example. It's a good example of a bad example of how to be an active listener, huh?
This is a good example. Nobody can see your hand.
Okay. So do you see what Grant's doing? I have some of you who are turned and looking the other way right now. You might want to focus your attention back here real quick.
Yeah.
Joseph. Grant, will you model that again real quick? Showing, okay, so is this a good example or a bad example?
Bad.
Okay, and what's our good example? Showing some active listening, okay? So Drew said to really listen. Grant's reminding us of and he said to sit up straight. And Grant showed us some of the leaning in and nodding. Caleb. Oh, did you hear him?
Only knee to knee. You can't do elbow to elbow.
Okay, so, but remember it's,
Knee to knee, eye to eye. Knee to knee.
that's how we change our eek for this one. So eye to eye, knee to knee. And then remember that if somebody shares a certain piece of thinking, we need to honor their thinking by doing what? If you need a reminder, we have our chart up there. Where's our chart? If you are going to honor someone's thinking, so you're... Rule number 2.
Number 2. Raise your hand for permission to speak.
So you have this tool up here as a reminder, if you forget. Cadence.
I have something to share about the rain.
Okay,
Not doing this.
hold that thought for just a minute. Okay? What is a way to really honor your partner's thinking? Remember, our job is to grow our what? Thinking. And that none of us is as smart as...
All of us.
And to honor that thinking, what do we need to do? Go ahead, Ash.
How to honor our partners is to listen with your heart, your eyes, and your ears.
Yep, you are on top of it with all those body language pieces of this. What else do we need to do, Caleb?
Sit up straight, and lean forward, and you could also add on to your thinking too.
So now you're getting into another piece of this. There's the body language piece, but he's just saying, oh, you could add on to what they're saying. So remember, we also have this.
More clarification.
Oh, now we're getting into some different moves you can make. With your thinking. So if you are going to grow the idea, you might make a move. I heard you could add on. You could ask for clarification. What else? What's another move, Nicholas?
Agree.
Okay, agree with the thinking. What's one more, Cadence?
Disagree.
You could disagree. Is it okay to disagree?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We respectfully disagree with our partners, and that can still grow our thinking. So, back to the text. What are some other things that we could do to this text to improve it? You shared a lot of things that you noticed about it, and we grew our thinking with that. And as I added some paragraphs there because you were sharing that might help. And Brittany shared that maybe an index would help with some of those words that weren't familiar to us. Because they were names of different fish. So those were some different features of the text that would help us. What else might we do? Okay? Go ahead, take a moment to turn and talk. Turn and talk. What are some other things that, as a writer, you might do to the text to improve it for your reader?
On to the story. Like, there are some books that are about Minecraft, but maybe not all of them have all the stuff that might happen. Like, I know some talk about dimensions, like snowy biome, but some never really talk about Twilight Forest or the Lord of the Rings dimension.
There's like trap books where they don't tell you all about all the wild tracks. Like maybe squirrels.
We think it would be
Titles and subtitles, but also like since they're tropical fish, their names might not be our language. So you could like put in pronunciations to like help you know how to pronounce it better.
Okay.
So that way you know how to say it later on if you run into someone who's talking about that kind of fish.
Thank you. Hold on to that thought. I'm just going to pop in with some other groups that I can hear that you've got some really powerful thinking going on.
I noticed that they can add table of contents and put the words in it, and they can add they can add index to make their index.
I think they could put like the pronunciations for the fish, so then we would like know like where they're from and how to like say them, so that we won't like say it like a totally different way.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
He keeps putting my hands on.
I'm hearing some important thinking. Remember, I'm also listening for some moves that you're making in your thinking also. So yes, we're focused on not informational text features, but we also want to make sure that we're moving to independence with the conversations that we're having with our partners, okay? And growing the thinking together, which I am hearing, but try to identify what move you're making in your conversation, whether it is you're agreeing or disagreeing, adding on. Many of you are very conscientious about doing that. And some of us just need a reminder here and there, okay? So what might we do to add to this text to improve it a little bit? I'm going to come back over here to, how about Caden and Chase? Here, I'll hold on to this. Let's trade. What were you thinking? If you could improve that text, what might you do to it? Make it a little more engaging, maybe.
I don't know. Add fun facts.
Say, what was that?
Makes the text more interesting.
How might we do that?
Add exciting stuff.
So, you know what would be really helpful is if you showed that you, thank you, I appreciate that. Your body language is helpful. If you sit up and keep your hands away from your face. Thank you, Caden, I appreciate it. I want to hear what you were thinking. Do you need another moment to think it through? How about this? Okay, let's take a moment. Many of you selected a nonfiction text and you brought it back to your seat. And if you didn't bring one to your seat, maybe your partner did. Why don't you just take a moment with a partner, with your turn and talk partner, and would you take a look through that nonfiction text, your mentor text, and do some investigating? I want you to observe, and what do you notice about the text that might make it more engaging? What make that more engaging than what was up on the screen? I'll give you about 3 minutes, and then we'll see where you are from there. So go ahead and take your texts and take some time to look through those, and what do you notice in comparison? Okay?
This one is